When I was younger, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna be married by like 26, and then I'm gonna have my first kid by 28, and I had this whole timeline set up. And then we still have this confusing dialogue of, do I need my partner to make more money than me? You might notice your identity really taking a shift. 28 is a really confusing age. Like, you're kind of not in your early 20s anymore. You don't feel that same energy of like, I could just fuck around. But you are really close to 30. And when I was a kid, it was not exactly 13 going on 30 vibes. I did really romanticize my life of when I was in my late 20s or 30s and just feel like, oh, you're so sophisticated, you're all grown up. But I also felt like, oh my gosh, 30 is old. And I remember even being 26 thinking, oh, I am like in my later 20s now. I'm close to 30. And I'm 28 and I feel like I am just getting started. But it's not all lighthearted. I feel like it can be really deep. It can feel like really icky. It can bring up a lot of stuff in so many aspects of life. And so I just want to take a few minutes to break it all down in this video and kind of share what's going on in my world. As a 28-year-old, I turned 28 a few months ago. It's now January 2025. And so I still have a big chunk of 28 left to go. For context, a few months ago, I also got let go of my job, and like right as I felt like I was picking up momentum, although I felt a lot of resistance to the full-time job and the company I was with, I also felt like, okay, cool, I'm making a salary, I got to 6 figures, I'm building up a savings, like, ooh, maybe I could buy a house soon, I'm in a relationship and it's been like 2 years, like things are happening and I'm on my timeline. And then I get let go, and then I feel like a lot of things got flipped over, but not in a bad way. I feel like this shift really was so perfect for me to dive into this time of introspection and just processing. Starting off with just a scientific nugget, because I feel like science in some ways does matter, and in other ways it's all in the mind, it's all our belief system. But your prefrontal cortex, which is what makes us human, which is what really is the big differentiator between us and other animal mammal types, is our prefrontal cortex, which you can call it our human brain, and then we also have the animal brain, if you will. And our prefrontal cortex is actually still developing until we're around age 26. So isn't that crazy? I'm like 28 right now, but up until 2 years ago, and since that's a ballpark, my brain was still developing. And that feels like, oh, I've just now got like a lot more access to my brain. It's fully functioning. I feel like so many things are able to click together. I can learn things and create systems for myself and really apply them. So those are all just culminating together. And I used to be so hard on myself, even in high school, when there was such a pressure and demand of like being good in school, being good in studies, and you know, we're going to school really early, like lack of sleep and all of that. And I feel like our brain's just developing. And I don't know about you, but if you're like doing things that are probably not super healthy, whether it's not eating healthy or drinking or smoking or overdosing on caffeine, not being in tune with your circadian rhythm, I feel like just now I'm finally getting all of those health practices that are culminating together and really operating from the full development of my prefrontal cortex. So I want to say that to give ourselves credit that it's only in your later 20s, early 30s that you're really like, okay, brain, I got the hang of you and I know your potential, I know what you can do, and now let's actually do it. We've all heard this before, but your 20s are the time to like take extra big risks. Just play, like really try a bajillion things and mess up and experiment and travel a ton and be in many relationships. I mean, that's gonna apply to some people and not, but go through the breakups, go through the learnings. And you know, you're coming to 28, into your late 20s, even early 30s, and now you're taking all of these experiments and you're like, okay, what am I taking with me and what am I leaving behind? What is really sculpting my current or new identity? What really resonates? Now that I have access to my full brain, like what is really feeling like me? What are the values and characteristics that I really love? What are the learnings and what can I leave behind? There's tons of time in life to be reflective and introspective, but I do feel like this is a really valuable time, and it is a time that is going to challenge us, have us really pause and think. And that brings me to timelines, because I feel like, especially as a woman, but also a man, the timelines and the pressure of that, the pressure of societal timelines are really staring at you dead on in this stage of life. So relationships is a big one for me. I am consistently really looking at my relationship, looking at where I can continue to grow and pour into my romantic relationship, because I really do feel like if you are choosing to have a relationship, it's not something that's just pushed to the side. It's really something that can actually create and be a big foundation of your life and help you grow. I mean, this person's your teammate. They're your partner in life that you're committing to. So that's why I feel like relationship is so important. But I feel like in your late 20s, early 30s, this is also a time where relationship really feels overwhelming sometimes. In my early and mid 20s, I would be in relationships and I didn't feel like I was taking them too seriously because I felt like I had time, and worst case, if this person is not the person that's meant to be my long-lasting partner, if they're not meant to be the father of my future children, that's okay because I have time. And all of a sudden, now in your late 20s and early 30s, you, especially as a woman, you're coming up on your biological time clock of like your fertility and when it is healthy in that range to have a baby. And if you want to have multiple babies, keeping an account for that. So now all of a sudden, whether you're not in a relationship, and then there's probably a lot of pressure and you're like, okay, I need to get in a relationship, but you don't want to project that rush or pressure on people you're dating and trying out and seeing if they're going to be a good fit, and still allowing that spaciousness to grow and develop the relationship. But even if you are in a relationship, I would always think it was weird that women would be, in their late 20s, 30s, kind of having that conversation of like, when is he going to propose? And that's me now, because like in my mind when I was younger, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna be married by like 26, and then I'm gonna like have my first kid by 28, and I had this whole timeline set up. And now being 28, I definitely am not feeling fully equipped to have a kid. I could if I wanted to, but I do feel like there's parts of my life I really want to grow and develop and create more of a foundation to bring a kid or kids in this world and take on that responsibility. But that being said, because there are these societal timelines and because there are actual biological timelines, and if let's say I want to go a traditional route and get engaged and then married and then have kids, there are these like timeline pressures, and we're automatically in our mind going to do the math. And that could look like projecting on your partner. I know that's come up for me a lot. But when I detach from that societal timeline, or when I detach from like what is this age supposed to be like, what is age 30 supposed to be like, and age 35 and 40 supposed to look like, I think of the relationship I'm in now and it feels like we're right on time. I love the pace that we're moving at. It makes me feel so safe in my body and in my mind and in my nervous system, and I know my partner feels really good with that as well. So it's that continuous rerouting in relationship. And if you're single or if you're in a relationship, especially if you're a woman, we're in an era now where we're like kind of confused with gender roles. And I'm obviously speaking from straight relationships, but it used to be that a man could have a single income and provide for his whole family. That's not the case now. And as a woman, we've worked our way up so much, especially in America, to be able to have any job, to have big leadership positions, to make as much money as we want, to have respect for that. And then we still have this confusing dialogue of, do I need my partner to make more money than me? Do I need him to provide X, Y, and Z? What do I feel good providing? And it's this very confusing dialogue that I think can get in the way of whether you're dating and you're single and the dynamics there. I know the conversation of like if a man is paying for the first date or not is a thing these days, but also if you're in a relationship, I know that is really going to bring up a lot of much needed conversation, because I think talking about your finances in a partnership is so important. The most important, I think, outside of talking about sex, both of those are really, really important, and really talking about how you want to create your life. And speaking of finances, a home is such a thing. I mean, having Indian parents, they have been driving home since day one 1 of like the importance of buying a house and how that is one of the most important ways to invest and really lay down a foundation for yourself. And I so find value in that. But also, it's very hard to buy a house these days, and a lot of houses, the older that they're getting, I mean, I've been renting for years, and when I see all of the problems that my landlords have to deal with, so many leaks. Southern California got insane amount of rains, so many homes flooded and got leaks. I've heard that now a lot of houses are not actually being covered for fire insurance, where there's more fire hazards and more places that are in fire prone areas. It's really intense, and it really makes you wonder. This is also a stage of life. Maybe you learned about investing earlier on, or maybe this is the stage of life where you're like, oh, I need to get my shit together and like learn about money and learn how I want to circulate money and invest and even create generational wealth. Like now we're thinking about ourselves, but if we're thinking about family or maybe one day bringing in kids into the world, how can we build wealth and create comfort for them? But then with the housing conversation, it's like, okay, do I want to buy a home? Do I really want to take on that responsibility? Or do I really want to put my money into something that we really don't know, what the housing market's going to look like? How much money are you going to have to continue investing in the house for repairs? Do you want to rent? Are you going to have good renters? Like all of these things. Or do you want to take the difference of what you would have put into a house and invest that in whatever funds? I'm not going to get into that here, but we're learning about all of this at this age and really getting a deeper understanding of how we want to do that. And if we have a partner, how we want to do that with our partner. Money can bring up a lot. It can bring up a lot of emotions. And I feel like whether we are in a career, we're figuring out what careers we want to pursue, how we want to utilize our skills, we're going to be at a place where we are really going to be faced with these big life challenges or adult challenges. And we might even start questioning faith. Like, are you currently in a dedicated faith? Is that something you're exploring? I think the power of belief is so important. So whatever you believe and pour into, I think that is going to come into fruition for you. This might be a stage of life in your late 20s and 30s where you are really having that dialogue with yourself and getting closer to whatever faith feels right for you, or if that's not having a faith, but you're still kind of having some introspection there. And I don't feel like faith just has to be like, I'm praying. It can really be in a physical form of clearing out what's not serving us and bringing in what is. So really in your late 20s, early 30s, your body is like, you realize it's not as forgiving as it was when you were a teenager or your early 20s. I remember doing the vegan diet, doing the carnivore diet, doing all the things, and even just moving my body, over exercising, overtraining, and now my body is starting to get extra sensitive. I'm, especially as a woman, really needing to really tune into my menstrual cycles and really focus on fertility and notice what aches and pains are coming up. And the more I sit, I have to pay a lot more attention to moving and mobility and like creating heat within the body. So this is a stage of life where we're really taking into account, taking inventory of like, what are all these things in our life that we have maybe been neglecting or being, a little bit negligent with? Is caffeine really serving us? What are we doing that is just very habitual? Where are we still intaking foods that are not serving us? And even friendships, where are we holding on to the friendships that were from 10 years ago that might not really be serving us? And where are we putting our attention into friendships? I think it's also a stage of life where maybe you have some friends who've moved further away. Maybe you have some friends in relationships and you don't get to see them as often. It almost feels like friendships are these real relationships that you have to continuously pour time into. It didn't feel like that in high school where your friends are all just kind of automatic and they're there. Now it's like, oh, we need to continuously really work on a conscious friendship and see what value we're giving and receiving from each other, seeing how we can show up for each other. You might notice your identity really taking a shift. You might notice that you really like form this version of yourself in your teenage years, your early 20s, and after so many learnings, you are really feeling like you're a new, different person. But existing in that way with this new identity takes a transition. So it's definitely a time where you can feel a little bit like confused with your identity, or again, reevaluating how you are in friendships and relationships, because those people, especially the ones that have been there for so long, and we haven't even talked about family, but like family members who might still be interacting with you like you're in high school. I could definitely feel that sometimes with my parents or sibling. And all of a sudden we need to do the work to really stand by our respect and our care that we've put into developing this version of ourselves, this identity, and exercise that consistently in our relationships. And not everyone is going to like it, and that can bring up a lot of conflict. It can bring up insecurity within ourselves, because maybe the people who have always been there for us might not resonate with this version of ourselves. We notice that we're growing in one way and other people are maybe growing in different ways, or not growing at the same pace or trajectory. And I feel like life is all about growth, and it really doesn't matter what the metric of success is, as long as you feel like you're growing. And when you're in it, it might not feel like you're growing a ton, but when I pause and look back at where I was even just 2 years ago at 26, I'm like, dang, there was a lot of growth there. Even from the beginning of 2024, there was a lot of growth there. So really honing in on prioritizing growth and who around you is supporting you. What habits are you practicing that are supporting your growth, your spiritual practices, your health practices? What are your core values and what's aligning up with that? There's so many nuggets in like human design, astrology, numerology, all of that. But one of the big concepts that's really resonated with me and given me a lot of peace is that the first 30 some years of your life is really a chapter and period of deep self-discovery, deep experimentation, and risks. And sometimes it's just the last chapter of your life where you really become a master and a lot of things come into fruition. That's not the case for everybody, but I definitely resonate with that. And that has allowed me to fully exhale at times without the pressure of like, I need to become something or be something or put something insanely valuable out into the world by the time I'm 30. Because I feel like in this stage of life, we are just laying down the foundation, and that's okay. And it's not always going to look like we have something to show for it. Which brings me to social media and information overload. If you're watching this and if you're in your late 20s, like 26, 27, 28, or older, you remember being a kid. And I remember when the first ad, because we didn't have the option to pay and not get ads, so it's just ads on TV, and the ad for an actual camera on a phone came out. And I remember that was like the biggest deal. But now we have social media, and I still miss the good old days where we would just post a square photo, it would show up in real time, and the algorithms weren't getting it mixed up with like really trying to like push information and push content that maybe you didn't even really consent with yourself. Like, yes, I want to intake this information. It's really being pushed at us. By no means am I saying you need to get off social media, but it is just something that naturally happened to me. I got the call around Christmas time that I needed to get off Instagram because I felt like Instagram and how I was showing up on there, it really was putting a lot of pressure and creating a lot of overwhelm, because you are surrounded by people who are sharing the highlights of what they're doing, and so many content creators, so many people doing big things, and that's all beautiful, but it also feels like a lot of pressure because you are just seeing those amazing things that are going on around you. Everyone's getting engaged, having kids, becoming a coach overnight, like all the things. And I think it really takes away from that deep time to really take all your learnings from your 20s and even before and deeply integrate them. It almost feels like information overload and noise. It's not even like valuable information. Sometimes it's just noise. And we forget that just taking one piece of content, one podcast, one book, and just really giving ourselves to that for a while with nothing else can really allow us to integrate and get deeper learnings from that. We're kind of tricked that the more podcasts we hear, the more books we read, the more reels we scroll through, even if they're informational and about health benefits and health learnings, that we are learning more. But it really can create a lot of noise in the mind, and that overwhelm and stress that we don't even realize can actually slow us down from productivity and create more underlying angst and anxiety within us. So pausing from social media has definitely been something healing for me as of late. I didn't deactivate or anything, but I'm just off the app, it's off my phone, and I've noticed how much more time I have to breathe and just think about kind of what I'm sharing right now with you. And finally, I just want to remind you, you are at the very beginning. I am at the very beginning. There are people who are like just turning 40, 45 and like kicking off insane, crazy careers. Honestly, listening to some Gary Vaynerchuk, I haven't listened to him in years, but I listened to a video titled something about being 28 and you're just at the beginning, and I was like, damn, yeah, that was good stuff. When you take the time for stillness, being in your own world, being in your own energy for a while, or if you're in a relationship, having that sacred time with your partner and really just thinking about what does your personal timeline look like, and pausing from the outside noise can allow you to reconnect with your deepest truth and your desires and peace. Peace is the biggest thing, and the surrender and trusting, knowing that it's actually fun to be in a stage of figuring it out. So this is just my reminder that you are just at the very beginning. Have fun with this time where you just get to really soak up and integrate all of your learnings, have more access and potential from your brain even, and you still get to try out what's working, try out what's not working, make mistakes and continue learning, and you don't have to have it all figured out. Take those breaks from anything that is projecting a societal timeline on you. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Sucha, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know if you like this kind of video. It was really inspired from a previous video I did about my quarter life 28-year-old crisis. I'm kind of in it. I'm processing. I'm in a stage of really just exploring, especially artistically, and using my voice and using my body. And I'm finally at a place I feel like where I'm just really trying to have fun with it, but that does not come without its waves and its hardships and its challenges that come up in relationship and within myself, and it's questioning. So I invite you to, especially in the start of this year, take some time to really cut out the noise and just be with yourself and allow yourself to just be and have fun and get excited about not having it all figured out.